Welcome to the DIY Writer Show with the mild-mannered, slightly heroic host, Jeff Bacon.
This is Jeff Bacon with the DIY Writer Podcast, and today I have Liesel K Hill with me. She's a novelist. She writes in a couple of different genres. She's also an author coach, and she also has a podcast. So it'll be kind of an interesting, at least for me, it's going to be interesting because I get to nail her with some questions on podcasting, which I don't know anything about since I've done it for a while, but also some author coaching and her books. She's got a wide range of books. She does sci-fi, fantasy, dystopian, and historical romance, which is kind of interesting. She has a couple of different pen names, and we'll kind of go over that too. So without any further ado, Liesel, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, you know what? It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So let's start off with the books and see where we go.
Okay, great. Yeah, I write under technically 3 different genres, and I have different pen names for them. So I write I kind of do high fantasy and then more of a sci-fi dystopian, and I keep those under the same pen name. And then, like you said, I have historical. It is historical romance, but it's also kind of historical romance / historical fiction. You know, so it's kind of in both categories. And then I do crime fiction as well.
Oh, I didn't see that. Crime fiction, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. It's been kind of like Crime Week this week for me as far as doing podcasts.
Has it?
Yeah, I had a guy from Great Britain who worked in the his name is Brian G. He worked as a forensic scientist for like 25 years. You know,
yeah.
With the police departments over there, and he wrote a book based on being some of the stuff that he'd seen. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I don't have anything nearly that cool behind my love for crime fiction. I watch too much Criminal Minds. That's why I write crime fiction.
Yeah, he doesn't watch that stuff anymore because it's all made up. He said that's not the way it happens in the real world.
I'm sure that's true. Yeah.
Criminals aren't nearly that smart. That's why they're criminals.
Right. Yeah.
But they're either criminals or politicians over here, whatever.
Yeah. Right.
Same class. So anyway, what's your latest book?
Let's see. The most recent one that I actually put out is the last one in my crime fiction series. It's called Vacant Passage. So my crime fiction, I've got a standalone book called The Botanist, which does really well.
Okay.
And then there's a series called Street Games, and I just finished up the last book in that series a few months ago.
Okay.
But I'm writing right now. I'm finishing up. My dystopian series has 3 books out, and I decided that I wanted to get the last 3. It's going to be a 6-book series written all at the same time. Mm-hmm. And my goal was to get that done by the end of this year, and I'm probably not going to quite make that. It'll be more like January-ish, maybe February.
Yeah, it's still pretty good though.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's just not quite as quick as I wanted. But I'll be putting those out, kind of rapid releasing the last 3 of those. So that's kind of what I'm working on right now.
Okay, cool. Do you have any other plans for 2021 as far as releases and stuff? Or you got some?
Oh yeah. I'm one of those people that. Sorry, go ahead.
How many books you plan on releasing in 2021? Because it sounds like it's pretty.
Yeah. So the other thing that I'm working on, and it's been a lot slower burn, is I have a dragon series that I'm working on, and I kind of had decided to in 2020 I wanted to spend most of my writing time getting the Intricron series done, but I was also wanting to kind of work steadily on the Dragon Magic one because I've had that on the back burner for like 4 years. I mean, it's been a long time. I've been trying to get around to that, and so what I decided to do is just to write like a chapter a week of the Dragon Magic book.
Yeah. And
I was sending it to my group, and I've actually been sending excerpts to my email list, and that's worked really well. I've gotten a lot of really good feedback for that. So I'm going to, like I said, rapid release the 3 dystopian ones, but then after that, I'm already finished with the first Dragon Magic book. And so I'll start releasing those, and once I get the dystopian series done, I'm going to put all of my attention on the Dragon Magic series. So I'm not sure how many I'll actually get released in 2021, but I'm thinking there'll be the 3 dystopian and probably at least 3 or 4 of the Dragon Magic ones. So okay. I've got a busy year lined up, and let's just hope that nothing like 2020 happens again to knock all our plans on their butts.
Yeah, we'll have COVID-21.
Yeah, let's hope not.
Yeah. Well, let's hope not. Absolutely. So you're kind of busy though. You've got your podcast, but you also do author coaching.
Yeah. And that was kind of a 2020 thing. I decided that I kind of wanted to do more stuff online and kind of give back to the community. So I've become a what I call a story clarity coach, which just means that I help authors, go from, I kind of try to give them the entire, what would you call that? The entire sequence from story idea to helping them develop a daily writing habit and everything they need to put into their book purposefully to position it as a bestseller. So that has to do a lot with storycraft, genre trope, that sort of thing. And then also marketing. So I can coach on any of those things individually, but I have, I can do all of them too. And my whole point is to give authors kind of a rinse and repeat formula, how to get their books done efficiently, but also keep them, obviously very high quality. You don't want to rush this and end up with a really watered down book or anything. But it's really funny because one of the things I say a lot is I think you can get a, quote unquote, normal size book done in about 90 days without too much trouble. Now, of course, it's going to be different if you're writing like my Dragon Magic series, the high fantasy books, they're door stoppers. They're like, more than 100,000 words. And that's different if the length is different. But I usually say a normal size book, which would be like 70 to 90,000 words, if you get the right processes in place. And it takes a little bit of practice. It's just like training your body for a marathon. It's not any different to train your mind to write a book and to really get it down. But once you do, you should be able to get that length of book done in less than 90 days. There are plenty of people who do it faster than that and still have really, a big fan base and really great reviews. So, they're not, crappy books that they just threw together. And I do get a lot of pushback from the author community about that, probably from pantsers and discovery writers mostly, who don't feel like they can do a book that fast and like it won't be high quality. But the thing I found that's really funny is that I've interviewed for my podcast quite a few nonfiction authors, and that's just par for the course for nonfiction. It's very common for them to say you can do your book in 90 days,
So there's a good amount of research that goes into a nonfiction, but it is, I think it's a faster process.
Yeah, I do too. It definitely, there's a lot more moving parts to have to think about with fiction that they, for just the fact that they can, nonfiction, you can sort of talk to the audience in a conversational tone and you don't have to worry so much about dialogue and passive voice. So I get that. I think there is more that goes into fiction, but even so, I still do it pretty regularly in 90 days. And I know a lot of people who do. So that's just one of the things I teach.
Kat Hudson, she writes 18,500 words a day. That's just what she does, and she is on my podcast. And then you look at somebody like Andy Pelican, who what's he put out, like 10, 15 books a year, you you can do it. You can do it really easily. And then, you talk to some other authors who they put out a book a year or 2 books a year, and, they write 700 words a day, or whatever. There's some authors that just kind of dabble in it. I really think it just kind of depends on the personality and everything else.
And for sure, like, I'm certainly not judging anyone who wants to write slower. If that's your jam and what lights you up, great. But my point is, if somebody wants to, figure out how to go faster and build their backlist a little bit faster and get to the point where they're maybe living off their author royalties to a greater extent, if not altogether, then that's kind of what I teach. So
do you buy into the 20 books to 50K mentality?
Yes and no. I like that group, and I would definitely recommend any newbie authors join that group because they have really good information for self-publishing. But at the same time, I feel like that's a very middle of the road sort of milestone. There are people who have far less than 20 books who make more than 50K. And then there are people who have a lot more than 50 books who aren't making it, probably because their books aren't very high quality or they don't know how to market them or, something like that. So it's a benchmark to shoot for, but I don't think it's by any means set in stone.
Yeah. And I would agree with that, but I think on average, I think he kind of looks at the average 20 books. It should get you about 50K if they're, and they always have that qualifier. If it's a good book, if it's actually somebody's actually reading it, and you're not doing anything stupid.
Yeah, definitely.
Your first book's going to be kind of maybe your second book's but after you get book 6, 7, 8, you might go back and rewrite those first 2 books, or you might do this, that, or the other thing. And I mean,
Right.
it all kind of works out, but yeah, I think the biggest thing that I take from that group and a couple others is that you just have to be steadfast,
Yes.
get through it. You're going to have to produce. You can't produce nothing and expect to have income.
Right.
And you're going to have to get through all of the, bad reviews, all of the, writing, blocks and all that other kind of junk, and just end up producing,
Yes. Yeah.
but
And as long as you're consistent and just like you said, just keep pushing through, you'll get to a point where you can write a really good book.
oh, yeah.
You can't, it's not possible to not learn as long as you don't give up. So yeah, I
Right.
completely agree with that.
I would agree with that too. I think what I get a real kick out of are the Facebook ads.
Yeah.
Write a book in 30 days and be a millionaire.
Yeah.
Okay. Who did
Yeah.
that?
Good luck with that.
Write a fiction book to enhance your business. Okay. That can be done. A lot of people do it, but it's not going to be something that's going to be a New York Times bestseller right out of the chute.
Right.
That doesn't happen all the time. I think the more common story is that, you write a few books, you make some money,
Right.
you might do audiobooks, but everything, if you treat it like a business and you produce, I think you're doing all right. But,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I'm not going to
If
remember
I'm wrong
who.
about anything, tell me, because I'm just a dude on a podcast. I'm not really.
No. I mean, I think it's important for people to have realistic expectations, and the best way to, like you said, there's no way to really shortcut it. You have to spend the time and go through it and learn. But the best way to make that learning happen faster is to, learn from other authors and just learn everything you can in the space. But what I was going to say, I'm not going to remember I read an article and I'm not going to remember who the author was that they were talking about, but it was an author who was traditionally published and wrote a book that was instantly this overnight success and hit the New York Times and all that. And people kind of looked at that and they would say, oh, well, obviously that doesn't happen very often, so it's an exception. But they did look at that as being kind of an interesting exception because her first book did get that big. Mm-hmm. But then the article was about how on the backside that actually wasn't true. That's how it was billed. But she had written 7 or 8 books that had tanked, and then they sort of rediscovered her. It was just the way they marketed that book that made it seem like she was a debut author, but she wasn't. So even when you hear about these exceptions, a lot of times they're not as much of an exception as you would think. So
right.
Anyway, just something to keep in mind.
Well, and that's a good point. Marketing does, those marketing folks lie.
Yeah.
They just lie.
It's really true.
Well, it's not really a lie. It's just a, fabrication of the truth.
Yeah. It's just the way they're positioning the truth that it came from. Put it that way.
Absolutely. And that's I think that's important to look at when you are marketing a book is positioning. How are you going to position it? Because it's not exciting. It's not as exciting to have somebody that they've written 14 books and here's number 15 and it's really taken off well. So and they probably don't. She probably doesn't want anybody to read those previous books anyway.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of, I didn't know what I was doing. I really stunk. I didn't have a voice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, for sure.
So what's your biggest, just low hanging fruit as far as marketing goes? I mean, what's the one thing that you tell authors you need to do this?
So let's see. First of all, I do kind of harp a lot on trope and genre research, especially because I teach a lot of storycraft and, like I was saying, what to purposely put into your book in order to position it as a bestseller. Honestly, the biggest marketing you can do before you write is that trope and genre research to make sure that you're hitting your target market. Mm-hmm. The other thing that I talk about a lot that I don't see authors doing very often is to purposely create a world and use that to market, especially to their email list. So it's things like, it's going to seem pretty simple, but things like coming up with words and phrases and this can be anything. It's obviously easier with a fantasy world that's a whole different world, but even if it's contemporary romance or something, whatever world you're writing in, come up with words and phrases and events and of course characters, and use that like unique vernacular to build your audience. And people don't do that very often. So it's things as simple as like, use the Force, Luke, right? I mean, that's a line everybody knows from Star Wars, but if you can come up with things like that and then use that in your newsletters, when you're marketing to your email list, it makes them feel like they're part of this world and they know what you're talking about, where others may not, who have not read the books. And it's just a really effective marketing technique. So I teach authors to do that early on, to come up with the words and phrases and, maybe character quirks, and even maybe write emails in characters' voices, that sort of thing, so that they're that creates mega fans out of their fans, because they feel so intimately connected with the world you've created. And so few authors take advantage of that, so those are the main ones that I teach up front.
You know who does a really good job of that? You probably don't know her. She's not a huge author, but she does the Atera Chronicles, and her name is Linda Layton. And
okay, I've heard of her.
Have you? Okay. She her premise is that she's big into Sasquatch, Bigfoot. That's her thing.
Yeah.
And the book is, what if humans are descendants from Sasquatch and Homo sapiens actually, combining their forces and also their DNA. So right. it's this tribal kind of cave of the bear type thing, or it's really a cool premise. But when you look at her marketing, everything's got her main character or a Sasquatch in it, or some sort of animal that's related to her story. She's got sayings in there, so instead of saying like "what the hell," it's "what the krell." And she made up her own curse words in her books, and she uses those in her site, in her Facebook and her newsletters. And, she's really done a nice job of integrating her book. I'm not sure if she integrated her book into her life or her life into her book. I can't quite tell, but it's, she's got like 9 books out, and I think her 10th one's coming out, in this series. And it's, she's done an amazing job of doing exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, well, hey, if you can't tell, then it's pretty seamless. So that shows she's done a really good job.
She has, like I said, and there's all sorts of, that plus she's a Trekkie, so she attracts a couple of different crowds that are really like into her. I mean, she gets a good amount of participation in her groups, and she, like I said, she does a really good job.
Yeah, sounds like it. And I just don't think authors always realize, I mean, it's not actually that much more work. It just takes a little bit of forethought, but I don't think people realize how big a difference that can make in your marketing and in your fan base.
Yeah. I could see that, putting out an advertisement or something like that, and having something kind of quirky. And it's like, what the hell does that mean? If you read the book, it's like, oh, and then it becomes kind of, maybe cliche. I don't know, or, just kind of whatever, but that's kind of cool.
Right.
So that's cool. That's really good advice. So when you're coaching an author, what's the biggest downfall do you see? I mean, they're usually,
honestly, I kind of have to laugh at authors, and I was kind of hinting at this earlier. For some reason, a lot of authors
on this show, ma'am. I'm sorry. We don't laugh at anything. This is a serious author show.
Oh, you're just totally serious. Okay, I'm sorry.
No laughing at authors ever.
For some reason, there's a lot of authors who just don't think that they need any more storycraft training. We know what a hero is. We know what a villain is. We know what the climax of the story is, and maybe have even read a craft book here or there. But what I'm seeing is that even though they know that stuff, they'll kind of be like, yeah, I already know that. I want to know how to market my books. That's probably the biggest thing I get. And I say, okay, but are you actually implementing this stuff in your story purposefully, planning it and figuring out, exactly what the beats are? And I know that not everybody likes to, write their story that way, and that's fine. But if those things aren't there, if you're, whether you discover the story first or if you're more of an outliner beforehand, if those storycraft beats are not there, you're not going to produce a bestseller, period. And so many people think they know it, and they do on the surface. I'm not saying they don't, but they don't take the steps necessary to make sure all of that stuff is in there. And so then they end up with a saggy middle in their story, or, something that just kind of loses the reader's interest at some point. And they're really resistant to that. They don't think they need any more storycraft training. So I think that's the biggest downfall, because we all know that by far the best marketing you can do is to write a really good book and then write another really good book. So if your books aren't that great to begin with, not all the marketing in the world is going to give you an author career, So I think that's the biggest thing is I always have to talk them into how much they need to pay attention to the storycraft. And even if they already know it, they need to purposefully implement it in their stories.
So when you talk about beats in a story, how many beats do you like to use?
So I have a system, I use nine essential plot points. And it's kind of a proprietary system I've taken from lots of different places after kind of testing and seeing what worked and what didn't.
It's kind of what,
I use that.
It's kind of what Truby does.
Truby?
Yeah, I think he's somewhere around like 9 plot points. I think he just terms it differently because he's got his own little system that he sells or whatever.
Right. And most people do. I've seen 7. Of course, there's like 3 or 4 act structure. There's, I think Save the Cat is more like 15-ish, something like that. So it just depends on how much detail you're putting into each plot point. And I use that to plan the events. So I always take there's 2 different aspects of the story that you need to plan. There is the external, which is the actual action and the plot events. And I use those 9 plot points to plot that. And then there's the internal transformation of the character. And that's actually, people don't realize that's an entirely different system, and you kind of need entirely different plot points for that. And that's one thing that a lot of authors completely miss, and they don't even pay attention to that at all. So I teach both of those, but I also sometimes use the 9 plot points to plan a scene. So kind of on a smaller level, to plan the action in a scene so that you're pulling the reader through the scene. I mean, it's like any plot points, it's designed to start from an area of low tension, and move to high tension so that you're pulling the reader through the story.
I think 5 is probably I think that's the norm.
Is it?
I think so. I mean, just kind of looking at everything that I've read in probably the last 2 years, I think most of them have 5. Well,
I was gonna say StoryGrid has 5, I think, and I've looked through their stuff. And to be fair, like when I created my 9 plot points, especially near the end, a lot of them actually could be the last 3 of the last 4 could technically be combined into one. But when I created it was because I wanted to make sure that I, personally as a writer, was hitting everything I needed to hit. So they're kind of based on what my weaknesses were when I first started writing. So I kind of broke out like the climactic scene, since that's arguably one of the most important scenes in your book, into different plot points to make sure that I'm hitting every single aspect of that and not missing anything.
And that's kind of the point I'm driving at, as far as where I'm trying to steer you to, is not necessarily whether or not you have 5, 9, 10, 14, 142 plot points, although 142 might be a little too much. A little bit, yeah. It might be, that might be a 700-page book, who knows. Right. But as you write, you write that first book, and it may be, you may have 3 acts in it, or 3 plot points, 4 plot points, 5 plot points, whatever it is. But then as you grow, then you start, okay, this is the way I like to write. And you find your voice, and it's like, okay, like you developed your own system with 9 plot points, and that works for you.
Right.
I mean, that's kind of the morphing that you do as an author. And I don't think you ever stop morphing. You might have another, we may talk 3 years from now. It's like, I added a 10th, because I really wanted to put this in, and this really worked well in my dragon series. So I wanted to, and
right.
It's all very exciting. It's all really cool. And I think the beautiful thing about you sharing what you do with other authors is you're allowing them to grow through your experience. And I think that's one of the coolest thing about hiring an author coach, is that you're hiring somebody, and whether you're in their genre or not, you really get to know, writing is writing on the bones of it, I think. I change my opinions on stuff all the time as I talk to more people, but I think it's really interesting how other authors write, because I read authors all the time, and it's like, holy shit, that was brilliant. Okay, I need to implement that. It's very rare that I read a book that it's like, oh God, don't do that ever. That was horrible. Except for my own, but
Yeah, well, we all do that about our own. So
I'm in a new anthology that we released for free for the Indie Fantasy Addicts group on Facebook.
Mhm.
And by the way, if you're writing a dragon series,
Mhm.
you need to be in that group.
Oh, okay. What is it called again?
Indie Fantasy Addicts.
Okay, I'll look it up.
They have an author site. It's all fantasy. It's all
Yeah.
fantasy. So epic fantasy is probably the predominant high fantasy.
Right.
Urban fantasy, there's like two of us, but we tag along.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, whatever. But we wrote this anthology that it is. This is a door stopper.
Yeah.
It's 714 pages, about 400,000 words.
Wow.
A bunch of epic fantasy writers.
It's a cool cover.
Everybody wrote like a 10,000 word short story, so on and so forth. What I found in that project is that, there's, you read what they do and it's like, wow, the way they build their worlds and their magic systems and, just,
Mhm.
And then when I talk to them, how they actually formulate this stuff is just absolutely amazing. I love talking to people, on the fantasy side of things. I often wonder what would happen if a high fantasy person wrote a nonfiction book.
That could be fun. Actually, I would like to read that just to see the style.
Yeah, I would say not something on writing craft or anything like that, but something like car maintenance.
Well, maybe they could write one about like maintaining their dragon and then just like plug in all the car maintenance aspects of it.
That would be kind of interesting.
No, I totally agree with what you're saying. I think that's what's so great about writing is, like you were saying, the bones of it may be the same, but it's so unique to each individual. Everyone's got a different process and a different way of conceiving their stories. So it's really fascinating to see how other people do it.
How many stories have you written where they slap down the hero and you can't quite tell that they actually slapped him? And then the other one, you go to another author and they damn near kill him every other chapter. It evokes different feelings in you or whatever, but it's those styles that make and they're both good stories, but
Mm-hmm.
one may be more of an emotional type turmoil versus the other one is, he almost ended up splatted, or something like that.
Yeah.
Or he lost his entire family, and that's a common one or whatever. But those inciting incidents that people put in there, I always think are kind of interesting how they get there, and then what they do with them afterwards. But
yeah. And it's also important to remember that there's pretty much an audience for everything. I always kind of have to chuckle when I see like a review saying this author isn't subtle enough. Like it's, you get kind of these highbrow, way too obvious, not subtle enough. But then if you're too subtle, that becomes literary fiction. And there's a lot of people that don't like that either. So, you're always going to find an audience for whatever your style is.
There's all sorts of people that like certain types of writing and certain types of books. That's just what it is. And then every now and then you get that person who kind of meanders into your book that has no business reading it, didn't enjoy it, doesn't like it, and will never read you again.
Right.
It happens. It's just all personal taste.
Yeah.
It really is. I don't know, but how do you I think the biggest thing that I've seen with I kind of refer to it as my author class. So these are authors that I kind of started off with. And we're all kind of talking about, hey, we're going to release a book. Yeah, we're there. And as everybody's kind of progressed, I think it's the heartache, first of all, the anxiety of putting out a book.
Right.
That first book. And then the next part is, that first 1-star review and how it just crushes your soul for like a day or so, or a week or a month, and I've seen some authors just quit. They got one 1-star review and they're like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And, that happens.
And then
there's
always kind of sad.
Yeah. And then there's the ones that, embrace it and say, okay, that happens,
Hmm.
whatever. But I think it's been interesting to watch everybody kind of develop in my group, I guess, as far as how they write versus how they wrote when they first, because we'd submit short stories to each other, and it's like, oh well, this is okay and everything else, and now you read their stuff, and it's like, holy crap, you've really grown a lot in 2 years, three
Right.
years, 4 years, yeah, whatever. I'm old. Yeah, 4 years, but it's just it's I think it's a constant learning process. I really
Yeah.
do. Because
And when you say your group, do you mean you're like your critique group, your writing group?
it's just we met in different Facebook groups and just kind of became friends, and we just kind of hang out on each other's reading group pages, and kind
Okay.
of keep track of each other. And as everybody gets busier, you kind of drift away, but then you all of a sudden get sucked back, and it's like, oh my god, it's kind of like a school reunion every year or so. It's like, oh my god, you're awesome, how'd you do?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just people that you keep track of or whatever. So
Right. Gotcha.
I'm not even entirely sure how we all kind of got hooked together. We did all write a couple anthologies together, and
Yeah.
And that kind of failed in 2020. We were supposed to have one out for Christmas, and everybody's like, I don't feel like writing. I just really don't, and
Well, 2020 is the new El Nino. Everyone used to blame everything on El Nino. Now, like 10 years from now, it'll still be like, 2020.
2020 really screwed me up. Otherwise, I'd be just killing it right now. Yeah, that's a good. I'm actually going to write that down so I remember to have a little flashcard in my wallet. Just a minute. I know why I didn't do that. 2020 screwed me up.
That's right.
I'll put that on my tombstone.
Maybe everybody's, yeah.
Yeah, 2020 really screwed me over. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Actually, some people can say that, but so I probably shouldn't joke about it. But
yeah.
So what about
it helps us feel.
What about podcasting? How did that come into play for you?
Kind of the same thing. When I decided I wanted to start doing coaching at the beginning of the year, I was following a couple of entrepreneurs who were talking about how that's kind of the best way to grow your audience and get the word out and that sort of thing. And honestly, I wasn't all that dedicated to it the first part of the year, so it didn't grow very quickly. But I just knew that I wanted kind of a platform, to speak on and to help other authors. And especially in the author world, like I listen to a lot of author podcasts and writing podcasts. So I know that it's got a big audience.
Yeah.
So I just started one at the beginning of the year. I started out doing mostly solo episodes and training, and I'm sure I'm like really stiff and terrible in the first few episodes.
What's funny is that I think authors are probably the hardest people in the world on themselves. They're like,
yeah.
Oh, this book sucks. I oh my gosh, where it's like this Pooh Bear thing, and then you bring them into a podcast, they're like, oh, my podcast is horrible, I'm so boring.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think we're funny that way. We're just like, beat the crap out of ourselves. And then
definitely
somebody else is doing, and you're like, oh my God, they're awesome. And they're like, no, I suck.
It's very true. Yes.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're good. But anyway, I don't think I had a whole lot more to say. I just started at the beginning of the year, and I've kind of changed the format of it. Well, I'm not necessarily changed the format. I've kind of learned to do different things with it. So I actually do better putting my trainings on YouTube, because YouTube is more of a how-to kind of platform.
Yeah.
And I definitely get a lot more downloads for interviews and that sort of thing, because that's more what people are looking for on podcasts. And it took me a while to kind of figure that out. So it's, same thing, was learning process, and it's, growing now, and I'm having fun doing it. So.
Yeah, I haven't learned a thing about podcasting yet. So we'll see how this all works out.
Not a single thing, huh?
Not a thing. I just kind of throw them out there, and then like them if you do. If you don't, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care. I think the biggest thing, I was talking to a guy that he spends 5-6 hours a week just editing his podcasts.
Oh wow.
And it's like, okay, and his are very structured.
Mm-hmm.
Versus this show where we just talk about whatever,
Yeah.
But, and I said, well, I really don't, I try not to edit too much out because it's a conversation.
Right.
And it's very hard to say, okay, I'm going to cut this out and transition it to this and do this, that, and the other thing when I'm just trying to have a conversation with an author. So I really try and make it kind of natural and raw and everything else. And he goes, well, your audience is going to hate that. And I said, well, then they're going to hate it, and I think that's part of the author persona too, is that after you've gone through the bashings and the beatings and the embarrassment of actually putting out your first book, you start to not really care, and you just kind of throw stuff out, and you know what, if you like it, great. If not, I don't know how many authors have said they had that same transition. Their first book, the first thing that they did, whether it was a short story, a book, a screenplay, or whatever, they're like, oh my God. And then, after a while, I don't know if you can call it being jaded or whatever, but you start doing other things, and it's like, I really don't care if you like it or not. Love it.
Yeah.
Listen to it, and embrace it, or, don't ever listen to me again. Just whatever. And I think that,
right.
I don't know. I mean, personally, I think it's changed my life quite a bit.
Yeah.
To the better. Good. I mean, just being an author. I don't know if you've had the same experience or not, but like I said, it's a life-changing event just publishing a damn book.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think it helps you it definitely helps you connect with other authors a lot more than if you weren't interviewing them on the podcast, obviously. And it kind of helps you keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community. So I agree. I think it makes me feel a lot more connected than I did before. That sort of thing. And the other thing about it is that I think, like writing, with podcasting, anything goes, really. I mean, everybody has their own style. I listen to so many different podcasts that are just vastly different, and I love all of them. So, it doesn't really matter. You can do whatever you want, and your audience will go with you, and, it's all good.
I think, it's the same thing as writing a book. There's an audience for everything. You just need to find the audience and be able to market to them and say, hey, look at me. I'm right here. Please, type thing. I like I said, I think it's just an audio and video type of expression of the same thing you do with your books,
Yeah, I agree.
Because, I make up a whole bunch of stuff on the podcast that isn't true.
Good to know.
Yeah, there's somebody out there going, okay, we're going to check this son of a gun out. Let's see.
DIY author fact check.
Yeah, author fact check. Yep, I'll have somebody after me soon. That'll be really cool. But no, I find myself really loving talking to authors and just talking about the experience and everything. And my general hope is, number one, that other authors find this helpful. Number two, that your readers, when they see this, they get to know you a little bit better, and I'm hoping that it endears them a little bit more to who they follow as far as their authors go.
Right.
You get to see their real personalities.
Yeah.
Not that they don't, but it's just a different form of it.
Well, and there really is a bonding element there. I mean, when they listen to your voice over and over again, they do start to feel like they know you. And so, business people use that as like a sales tactic,
Oh, sure.
even if they're not selling on their podcast, just having their customer listen to their voice, it helps them trust you and know you and like you better. So they're more loyal that way.
I think the most obnoxious thing that's out there right now are the webinars.
Yeah.
As far as that goes, I just, and I actually looked at, trying to do some webinars for a couple other projects I have going on. And I can't bring myself to do them.
You can't do them.
No, I can't, because it's the upsell thing that they do.
Yeah.
It's
one of those things. Yeah. I mean, I've done a few webinars. I'll probably do more at some point in the future. I don't love them either, especially if you attend a few, you can just see the kind of the flow of them. You kind of know what to expect. And I know that's what people get annoyed with, is because it's kind of salesy.
The biggest thing I get annoyed with is that they lure you in with promises, and then on the actual webinar, they don't tell you shit.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Because
like
they want you to buy the course or whatever
right.
they're
So it's
selling.
15 minutes of, hi, my name is John, and you may not know me, but I am a multimillionaire on a jet. And right now we're going to Cancun. Just for the day, you know, and they, you know, you're a millionaire. I get it. La da 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 da. And then 20 minutes later, if you want my secrets, you know, and the
Right.
actual webinar is, you know, about, you know, here's 3 secrets we'll share with you for free, and you don't ever hear anything except for, you know, the bull crap.
Yeah. Well, and the only thing I would say about that too is that, yeah, I almost liken them a little bit to like pop-up, what do you call them? Pop-up forms, email forms. And the reason I say that is because everybody's annoyed with them and everybody says they hate them, but everyone still uses them because they work. And so I think webinars are the same way. You know what I mean? Even though, yeah, everybody's annoyed with it and there's plenty of people that are going to, you know, leave hate comments and that sort of thing. But the people who do webinars, they make money on those webinars. So that's,
they do.
That's why they keep doing them.
So I kind of was playing with an idea about doing something kind of like that for a book release.
Yeah.
Instead of a live event, doing like I mean, you could do it as a live event and then just have it up there, but you know, just doing something that's kind of like a webinar, you know, and then, you know, buy this book and then here's 3 other books that are just like it, you know, or, you know, here's a series or something like that. I haven't quite worked that out in my head, but you know, I was pretty sure I was drinking beer thinking I could do a webinar to sell books, and just, you know.
Well, I think that's a viable idea. I mean, you don't even have to do an official webinar. Like you said, you could do it as a live in your reader group or something. But just using the sort of the format of the webinar, because that is a proven, you know, psychologically a proven sales strategy, I guess you could call it. But yeah, I mean, I think doing something like that and just kind of adapting it, I guess you would have to just adapt it to your readers and to your books and everything. But I don't think that's a bad idea. I think that somebody should test that out and tell us how it goes.
Well, you know, I've got a whole bunch of screwy ideas that I want to try just to see if they actually work, that have kind of popped up. Not ideas from other authors, but I've kind of popped up in just doing this podcasting stuff and watching what other people do. And it's like, I could actually do this for my books, or I could do this for somebody else's books, you know, and it's just, it's kind of cool stuff. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of in the same place, because as I've started to do my coaching and my podcast and everything, I've been spending a lot of time in the entrepreneurial space and, you know, following people and learning from people who are not part of the book community, the fiction community, that are more like high ticket offer, high price courses, that sort of thing. And yeah, I've kind of thought the same thing. You know, how could I apply this to books? And it just, the biggest thing that I think has struck me about being in that space this past year is that there are a lot of things that are just not being taught in the authoring space that really ought to be taught, that are just entrepreneurial practices, you know. Do
you know what blew me away?
What?
So I have a LinkedIn account. Okay, no big deal. I have 600-700 contacts ish, maybe more. I don't know. I really don't pay attention to it all that much.
Yeah.
I started doing this podcast, and I go through Podbean. And one of the things is, you know, do you want to post this to your LinkedIn account? It's like, yeah, sure. I've never posted anything to my LinkedIn account. Why not? And, you know, I get, the podcast actually gets, you know, 30, 40 views within, you know, probably about an hour after I post a podcast.
Really?
Yeah. I've been kind of playing with the times and everything else, but it seems to be pretty consistent, you know. And every time I post one, I get a little more interaction and everything. And then all of a sudden LinkedIn starts saying, hey, you're posting, good job, we love you, you know. Oh, finally you're doing something with your account, you know. But
we're so proud of you.
Yeah. And I just kind of thought that LinkedIn's kind of maybe something I've never really utilized. And, you know, 600-700 people maybe seeing it, you know, that yeah, it may help, it may not. Most of them are computer dorks, but you know, you know, trying to sell software, but I'm pretty sure they read books or play video games or, you know, something, you know, other than that. And it just never really occurred to me to ever leverage that.
Yeah.
You know.
I'll have to look into that. I'm not sure if I'm posting my podcast to LinkedIn. Like I know I'm posting it to several of the the different platforms they offer for you, but I'll have to look into that. I've been trying to kind of leverage LinkedIn a little bit the last few months. I don't know that I'm doing it very effectively yet, but yeah, it's kind of a tricky platform. You kind of have to know exactly.
I didn't say I was doing it effectively or right. I'm just saying I did it. And like I said, every podcast gets, right away it gets, like I said, 30, 40 views, what does that mean?
Yeah.
I don't know. Somebody scrolled through and stopped on it for a minute, or, what did they do? I mean, are they actually listening to it? I mean, there's no way to really, you could, I suppose, track it, but I do all the automated stuff, so I don't have to sit there and, do it myself.
Right.
You lose tracking by doing it that way, but
yeah,
I thought it was kind of interesting. The other interesting thing is I hate Twitter. I absolutely, I just, there's a few people I follow and read their stuff just because it's funny, but other than that, I really don't get into Twitter.
Yeah, I don't too much either.
Yeah, I started posting my podcast to there, and all of a sudden I started gaining followers. I went from I think 4 followers to 100 followers in like 4 weeks, and I'm like, it's not bad. Okay, so then I started following people back and doing, following some other people, and I think that's another place I can grow my podcast a little bit.
Yeah.
I had somebody tell me that Snapchat's a good place to do that too, and I'm like, I have no idea how that even works. Whatever. I don't know that I'm going to get 20-year-olds to actually snap me back, but whatever.
Yeah.
But
I don't really do Snapchat either. I kind of prefer Instagram, IG stories, and IGTV to Snapchat.
Yeah, I'm not bad on Instagram as far as the authoring, but I'm combining my authoring and my podcast in one. And I need to figure out how all that works as far as promoting your podcast. I've done a couple of posts. Hey, somebody who's kind of big on Instagram, have them on the show, and then post, hey, look,
yeah,
they're here, but I haven't really done a good job of actually using. I've got 4,100 followers, I think, or something like that on Instagram. Not huge, but not bad. I could be leveraging that a hell of a lot more than I am too, but that's all 2021 stuff.
Right. Yeah, I usually I upload most of my my YouTube videos to IGTV so that my author followers can see them. And then I use do you know what Headliner is?
No.
Headliner is Stephanie Gass introduced me to it. It's just like you can make a little video. It's almost like a video pin, like that you would put on Pinterest. It kind of looks like that, but it's like a 1 minute sound bite, or maybe it's only a 30-second, either 30 or 60-second sound bite from your podcast. So you just upload your podcast, like click on the little part you want, and then you can kind of design it. And so it's just like a little video pin. And a lot of times I'll put that in my Instagram stories, so
that's cool.
Yeah. So just things like that. And I don't even know, like you, I'm not like tracking it super closely. I have no idea how many new followers it's gotten me or anything like that, but it's a way to get yourself more exposure. So.
Yeah. And, I kind of look at all this like, same thing like book marketing. You could do everything in the world, but really you should probably concentrate on trying to produce something, and then, step into each platform, as you get comfortable with something else, then go ahead and expand out to another platform. And, I have no interest in going on to Pinterest for at least, I mean, I shouldn't say no interest, but I mean, it's one of those things that, after I get Instagram down and Twitter down, then, I'll probably jump into Pinterest, but, everything else has to be really easy. Otherwise it's going to, make it just horrible, and then I'll stop.
Yeah.
I'm kind of adverse to pain sometimes.
So you have no Pinterest interest, right?
I have no Pinterest interest at this time. I thought about hiring a VA and having them do it, but I don't know.
I need to hire a VA too. But VAs are great because they take all the busy work.
They take
So
all
you
the
have to do
mundane
it.
shit so you can actually do what you want to do, which is write and, talk to people on podcasts.
Write and podcast, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
and there's a cost to it, but on the other hand, it's like, hey, make some graphics and put this on Pinterest. That's a hell of a lot easier than, going into
Right.
Canva, going into Adobe, doing this, doing that, It's like, yeah, but then I always feel kind of cocky. I have a virtual assistant and I am the producer, whatever.
Yeah.
Shut up. Get over yourself, Just slap my ego around every now and then and say, you're nothing. Just shut up and do something.
Well, as long as you do that, as long as you slap your ego around sometimes, then maybe you can hire a VA and it'll be okay.
maybe I might show up to my next podcast in a 3-piece suit saying, no. So we're kind of running up against an hour here fairly quickly, so we should probably start wrapping up. My wrap-ups usually take another 15 minutes, so just kidding. I was on your podcast about a month ago, and that went really well.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed talking to you. I really appreciate you being on my podcast too.
Oh yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.
I do think that the one thing that I'll say is with authoring and starting to write, or even if you're writing, it's never a bad idea to hire a coach. It is never a bad idea to have another author that you can bounce things off of, or have them look at something with a critical eye and say, okay, dude, you need to be doing this. I mean, somebody to kind of slap you upside the head and say, no, this is crap. You need to do this, whoever it is. I think I'm of the opinion that hiring an author coach is above and beyond a beta reader group. I really do, because the beta readers are going to tell you, oh, you lost me at this part in the story, or I really wish you would have written this character in a little bit more, which are fine, but that's from the reader perspective. The writer's going to tell you, you're kind of meandering around this, but you really didn't hit this point, and, we need to work on this part as far as your story craft goes, or, your plot points. I mean, and it even goes beyond, I think it's something that you need to do before you even, send it off to an editor, because a developmental editor would do kind of the same thing. But I think an author looks at it from a little bit different perspective, and I think it's very helpful. So, I mean, I don't think there's enough author coaches out there, to be honest with you. And I think a lot of people, I thought I could just go ahead and write a book, throw it out on Amazon, and boom, done, published author,
Yeah.
And
I think author coaches, at least for me, and when I teach, it's almost like a life coach, but just for authoring, because of course I cover the story elements of it, like you're saying, and like a beta reader would, except in a lot more detail. But I also teach not just what to do, but how to do it, and how to do it efficiently, and how to, like I say, like how to rinse and repeat it so that you can continue writing books. And that's just so much more than what a beta reader would do.
And I also think that if an author's listening to this and you're thinking, I will never do that, I'm good, I'm done, you're not an author.
Yeah.
Realistically, I mean, you need to learn every damn day. You need to figure out something else. You're always thinking about your story and other things that you can write and everything else, but you're also always thinking, how do I form this? How do I do this? How do I do that?
Right.
If you're not constantly learning by either reading other books, going to conferences, talking to whatever, I think you get stagnant, and you don't want to do that. You always want to be better. You want your next book to be better than your last. And I honestly think the best way to do that is an author coach.
Right.
I really
well, and
do.
Something I always say, what I was saying earlier about how so many people don't think they need storycraft, which is only just one aspect of it, but most people, and this goes right along with what you're saying about them not being willing to learn more, most people who claim they don't need any more storycraft training are writing books and uploading to Amazon, and they're not selling, period. So that should tell you something. You need to be willing to invest in your own success as an author. And coaching is probably the best way to do that.
Yep. That one-on-one interaction that you get, whether it's once a month once a quarter, once a week, whatever it is,
Yeah.
will become invaluable. And you may switch from one coach to another or do this or that. It's good to have
Right.
different sets of eyes, but getting that help is probably way more, it's a way better spend of money than dropping $1,000 on Facebook ads that get you 3 sales.
Right. Right.
I mean, develop the stories, then the marketing will be easier afterwards, because you'll find
Mm-hmm.
those conversion rates are better, because people like your cover, people
Mm-hmm.
like your book blurb, people like the story, and then it spreads. I mean, it's all
Right. Right.
combined. But I think working on that base is probably the best thing. And I
Yeah.
applaud you for starting a author coaching. Like I said,
Thank you.
it's needed. But so with that, anything else you want to tell your readers or your clients or podcasters or anything else?
It's just important to indulge your own creativity. Don't apologize for it, and it's what's really do what lights you up, and just keep, like we talked about, keep learning until you get it figured out, and you will. The only way you can really fail at anything creative is to give up. So just don't give up and don't worry about it.
Cool. Hey, after this, I'd like to get all your links and stuff, so I'll put that in the show
Okay,
notes for all your,
great.
so if anybody's interested in, obtaining your coaching services, or, reading your books or listening to your podcast, just make sure that I'll make sure I have all those links when we're done. But with
Okay,
that,
great.
the amazing Liesel K Hill, and I appreciate your time today and talking with me and everything else that you've and all the knowledge that you shared. This is
Sure.
Jeff Bacon with the DIY Writer Podcast, telling you to have a good day and keep your chin up. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Please hit the subscribe button. I get a bonus for every subscriber, and I only need 1,506 more to become a full-time paid employee. Help me, please.